Welcome to the HTML5 Essential Training Series, Structure of a Web Page Part 2. I'm Mike King and I'll be walking you through this tutorial. So what we're going to discuss, this is Structure of a Web Page Part 2. In the previous tutorial, we looked at a few of the elements that made up the head section of our HTML5 document. Next we're going to look at the meta tags or the meta elements that make up that head section. The importance of these elements is often overlooked in the design of our website, but should not be. The site traffic many times is based on how well these tags are formed in the design of the website. Meta or metadata, this element has gone through some changes in HTML5. The meta element is a multi-purpose element for representing metadata on our web page. Many people ask me, what is metadata? And that's a good question, and one that's often misunderstood. To put it simply, metadata provides information about certain items' content. So we're looking at information about a certain item's content. But it's going to surprise you how many things that we have in everyday life that contain metadata. Metadata is used in many areas of technology, just not in website design. There's metadata in every cell phone call that you make, every digital photograph that you take, and every document that you write with a word processor. Metadata as it pertains to a web page is designed as follows. Web pages often include metadata in the form of meta tags. Description and keyword metadata are commonly used to describe the web page's content. Most search engines use this data when adding pages to their search indexes. And you notice I picked that up from Tech Terms 2014. That's their current definition of web page metadata. Did you catch that last sentence? The one about search engines? The metadata stored in our web pages is very important in the way in which the page is viewed by the many search engines and spiders that travel the web. Let's look at the different metadata tags that are available in HTML5. And if you're not quite understanding what I'm saying by search engines and spiders, as you go through your web development learning process, you're going to hear them referred to a lot. These are little things that are out there on the web. Google's a big one, not a little one. But they're out there on the web, and as websites come online, these little engines, these little search engines, and these little spiders go out and they start pinging all these different pages, gathering information on them, and bringing it back and building indexes and outlines of these sites. And that's what determines how you rank in a search engine. One of the tutorials that I plan to do for the OnTarget HTML5 site is SEO or search engine optimization. How you can actually optimize your site so that they're much more search engine friendly, because that is the whole purpose of having websites. Let's face it, the more traffic we get, the more things we're doing with our site. And this section of this tutorial pertains directly to what we're going to be talking about when it comes to search engines and how we optimize our websites. So in a meta tag, we have a name and a name value metadata pair. The meta element with a name attribute represents document metadata in the form of name value pairs. The name is a string. It specifies the name part of the name value pair, and the name specified must either be a standard metadata name defined in the HTML5 specification or a registered extension to the predefined set of metadata names. We're going to talk about the standard metadata names that are defined in the HTML5 specifications. We're not going to go into the registered extensions yet. That's something for a much more advanced class. The content is actually the string. Again, it's another string that specifies the value of the name value pair. And again, you're going to see we're going to get into deep discussion on this as we go through this tutorial. So if you don't understand right now, just hang on. You'll be there in 1 minute. And by the way, my resource for all this information, I'm getting right from the W3C draft documentation. This is the standards body that's putting all this stuff together for HTML5. I've pulled this off their draft documentation as of 2014. January 2014 is where I'm gathering this information. The name attribute on the meta element must be either a defined metadata name or a registered metadata name. Let's look at the defined metadata names that are currently part of the HTML5 specification. Application name. When the name attribute is set to application name, the value of the content attribute must be a string representing the name of the web application that the page represents. This is not used that often in simple website design. You won't see it that often. It's not something we use all the time. I probably will cover some of this stuff as we get into our advanced tutorial sections. But for what we're currently doing on our website design, we're not going to go into these applications that you can run with inside your head element. Author. The name attribute set to author. The value of the content attribute must be a string representing the name of one of the authors of the HTML5 document. I use this one all the time. When I author an HTML web page, I make certain I have a meta tag with author in there and my name in it, or on target HTML5 in it. That lets everyone know that's looking at the source of that document who that document belongs to, who's actually the author who designed that document. Description. When the name attribute is set to description, the value of the content attribute must be a string that describes the content of the page. And again, this is where we get into these screen readers and this web access. We want to make this description very pertinent as it pertains to the content of that particular page. So if we're describing a web page that has all our family photographs, inside that description we'd want to have, the Smith family photographs, or 50 of the Smith family photographs, something that's very pertinent to the page that it's describing. When the name attribute is set to generator, the value of the content attribute must be a string that identified the software used to generate the document. Again, not going to be used at all in our introduction tutorials. May get into some of this stuff when we start getting into our advanced tutorials. Keywords, one I use all the time and one that we will be using in this tutorial. When the name attribute is set to keywords, the value of the content attribute must be a set of comma-separated strings, each of which is a keyword relevant to the document. These are directly picked out by those search engines. That description, the author, and the keywords picked out by those search engines to help prioritize this page and index this page based on the content of the HTML5 document or the HTML document. Some guidelines for keywords. Use only lowercase characters. Search engines don't like uppercase characters in keywords. Keep all keywords on a single line with no line breaks. If the search engines or the spiders feel that you're trying to cheat them or trying to increase the rankings by adding additional space, which isn't really there, they'll just throw you out. The algorithms will throw it out. It's not going to even look at the page. Never repeat a keyword in a list. Limit the keyword list to 1,000 characters or less. I've seen pages of keywords on websites when I'm searching the web. A lot of times I'll go in and look at the source of the document just to see how they're using their meta tags and how they're doing things. And I'll see pages of these keywords and pages of descriptions. Defeated the entire purpose of the meta tag. Because once it exceeds, and it's not exactly 1,000 characters, I believe it's 1,024, 1K. But once it exceeds that limit, it's disregarded. It's not even indexed. So keep your keyword list to 1,000 characters or less. And try to use the plural form of keywords. This will help match searches made with both the singular and the plural forms of the word when people are actually searching using those search engines. So always try to use plural forms of the keywords when you're putting your keyword list together. A great keyword toolbox Google has available at this website, http://www.googlekeywordtool.com. Google has a lot of tools out there to help us properly index our site and help us generate keywords based on an HTML document. Use the tools that are there. This web link that I've got on the screen right now not only has keyword tools, but it has a lot of other cool administrative tools for website developers. So go there and look at some of the tools that are currently available. And by the way, there's a lot more. This is just a small sampling of some of the tools available. The meta charset document character encoding declaration is another meta tag that we use inside of our head tag. And you're going to see all these in a minute. I'm going to bring them up on the screen for you. But that meta element with the charset attribute represents a character encoding declaration. This is new in HTML5. We used to actually put this in a different location inside of our website or our head section. Now it's part of the meta tags. And if you look right at the top of my screen, you'll see that meta charset UTF-8. That now is a meta tag, and it tells me the character set is UTF-8. That's pretty much the standard character set that we use across web design for English. For Western languages is UTF-8. And you'll also see that in highlighting, I've got 3 other meta tags that we've talked about. I got my meta tag with description, my keywords, and my author. And you'll notice that again, I've got description. It's a description of the page itself, on target HTML5 training, on HTML5 template. Very short, concise, exactly what this page is supposed to be. Below that I've got keywords. I've got video, training, video tutorials, and you'll notice I put HTML5 in caps or uppercase. And one of the things we don't want to do, and I did this on purpose to point it out, we want to keep our keywords in lowercase. A lot of this has to do with the way that servers look at these keyword generation tools because of the different types of servers that are used. Some recognize upper, some recognize lower, some only recognize lower. So we try to keep everything in lowercase. And right below that I've got meta name author, and that just gives, in my content field, I've got who is the author of the particular document. So let's look at the structure of one of these. First thing, I've got my meta element itself. You'll notice I've got my meta tag with its opening brace, and at the very end of that statement I've got the closing brace. This is a breakdown of the meta tag element. Then right after that I've got the name equals, and then the description. What attribute am I looking for here? Remember we talked about different attributes. I can have description, I can have keywords, I can have author. This is an example of the description tag. So I've got my meta tag, then my name equal description, so that's the attribute, name is description, and then the actual content of that description. In this case, on target HTML5 training, HTML5 template. So that's how the meta tags break down. We've got the meta tag itself, the element identifier, the metadata value, which in this case is description, and then the meta tag content, which in this case is on target HTML5 training. That's how the meta tags actually break down. The meta element can also be used to redirect visitors to another page or URL. Anyone that's familiar with my original website, focusonflash.com, you're going to see this go up there very soon. I have got a lot of visitors to the Focus on Flash site. It's a website I designed 5 or 6 years ago that focused on delivering training in Adobe Flash, or Macromedia Flash at the time I actually started the site. When I begin to bring that site down, because I'm actually transporting all those tutorials over to this new site where I'm going to do a lot more than just Flash, I'm actually going to put this meta tag on that website. What it's going to do, it's going to let people know that the website Focus on Flash has moved, and in 5 seconds it's going to refresh their browser window to that new URL. And if you look, that's actually the URL of the on-target HTML5 site. So you're actually going to see this tag in use very soon inside my Focus on Flash site. This is also used on a lot of sites right now. I don't have to go to a new URL. I could actually refresh the current page that I'm on by just putting the page name. I could actually refresh to a different page in the same website. A good example are news sites. A lot of news sites will refresh their home page every 30 seconds because the news is constantly changing, and they want to make certain who's ever visiting the site, if they're sitting on it, they're getting the latest information. So what they would do is they would just put down the HTTP equivalent refresh. Under content, they'd put 30 seconds instead of 5, and they would put the page. Usually the home page would be index.html or index.php or home.php, whatever it happens to be. They put the page name, and it would refresh that page based on the seconds that they put in the content. This meta element redirects the browser to a new address after a 5-second delay for this particular example. But this can be used a lot of different ways. There's other meta elements that are available for use, but the ones covered here are what we will concern ourselves with in the introductory course. As we go through this next group of tutorials, when we start building these web pages, you're going to see we're going to start focusing on using some of these head elements as we design these pages. One other thing I want you to look at before we wrap this tutorial up is the link element. The link element is used to link to an external style sheet. When used to link to an external style sheet, the tag is supported in all major browsers. And you've actually seen this. We've actually used this already in the previous tutorials that we've actually done the demonstrations on. I actually had a link to a style sheet. The type was text/CSS, and then I had the reference, which is the folder and the name of the style sheet. We actually linked to that style sheet to style the pages that we were playing with as we went through our demonstrations. We're going to use that a lot as we move forward in the tutorial. The link element defines the relationship between a document and an external source. The link element is used most likely to link style sheets to our HTML5 document. The link element is an empty element in that it contains attributes only. It doesn't do anything else on our web page other than link to those external documents. And the link element only appears in the head section of a document, but can appear numerous times. I can have numerous different link elements in my head section. And you're going to see that as we go through these tutorials. One of the tricks that I use, especially with CSS, is I will design a base or a core CSS file that pertains to all my pages. And it'll have just basic stuff in there. It'll have my reset and my basic core colors, my basic core fonts. And then as I design individual pages, if they need their own styling, I'll have a link right below the core one that'll pertain just to those particular pages. Like on the HTML5 website, there's different CSS for the tutorial section. So I have a tutorial.css file, and only when I bring up those tutorial pages do I load that CSS file. So you can have multiple links in the head section of your document, and you'll see demonstrations of that as we go through the tutorial files. Real quick, just to give you an idea what the meta tag looks like for the link. Like the meta tag element, you can have multiple link elements, and in most cases many web developers do. And you can see that link element is highlighted on our sample template screen. And that's it. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. If not, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and where we're going to start diving into a lot more demonstrations and a lot less slides. Thanks. I appreciate you hanging in there, and look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.